So going on the theme of that consolidated risk, today we're excited to share with you the risk management work we do at WECC. And the new group that was formed this year to identify and mitigate risk across the Western interconnection. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Vic Howell, who is the Director of Reliability Risk Management at WECC, and Tim Reynolds, Manager of Risk Analysis, to come on up.
You may recall yesterday, there were a few of our distinguished presenters who maybe had a little frosting on the top, maybe a little frosting of the beard, and they broke out their reading glasses and made a comment. So I'm going to join that club because my arms at some point in my life got a little bit too short. Hey, thank you all for having me. My name is Vic Howell. I'm the Director of Reliability Risk Management here at WECC, and it's really good to be here today and to talk with you. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Reynolds, who's the Manager of Risk Analysis and Data Services. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to learn how WECC is developing a more transparent and effective method for risk identification, risk analysis, and risk mitigation. We're going to understand how it relates to the CMEP process and talk a little bit about how you can actually participate. And when I say you, your organizations, maybe you. So let's jump into this. It was interesting yesterday. It was really interesting how many times we heard the word risk. And Scott did a great job talking about it. In fact, some of what you're going to hear today kind of builds on a lot of what Scott talked about in the introductory presentation. And Tom Williams talked about it. We kept hearing the word risk, and we might have even heard the word risk as much as the word compliance, which in and of itself really kind of tells a story. So when you think about it, when you think about all of the activities we talked about yesterday, talk about the things we do, when you ask the question, well, why do we do all of this stuff? And at the end of the day, it really boils down to risk. It boils down to understanding, mitigating reliability and security risks. That really is what it is. That's the ultimate objective. And it's funny because I'm going to skip ahead for just 1 second. About WECC, here's our mission and vision. Look at the words in our mission. Our mission is to effectively and efficiently mitigate risk to the reliability and security of the Western interconnections bulk power system. So that's why we do. That's our mission. That's our very mission. And when you think about it, there are lots of different mechanisms to address risk. And, I know today a lot of you are CMEP people, if not all of you. And your world is kind of compliance, or it can be. When you think about it, there's a tendency to think about, well, compliance is this thing over here, and then everything else is kind of over there. It's a different thing altogether. But really, when you think about it, it's all kind of a spectrum. There are lots of things that we do together to identify and address, mitigate reliability and security risk. Compliance is one mechanism to address that. There are lots of other mechanisms. There's guidelines and best practice documents. There's lesson learned documents. There's training sessions and webinar series and all kinds of stuff. It's interesting, before I came to work for a regional entity, when I worked for a big utility back in the Eastern Interconnection a long time ago. So when I looked at the NERC and the regions, all I saw was compliance. That's all they were to me. And it wasn't until I came to work for a region that I discovered just how many other ways that NERC and the regions address reliability and security risks. And there's situation awareness, event analysis, performance analysis, reliability assessments. There's a whole gamut of things that are done to identify and address reliability and security risks. And, you know, with those many mechanisms, one of the things that can occur is siloing. You know, we all do the work we do, and we look through the lenses that we look through, and we see the world through our little universe. What can happen is there's a lot of different little universes, and those universes may not necessarily be talking to each other. So what can happen is, you know, each department is doing a great job at addressing the risks that they see, but they may not be doing a great job of talking to other groups across the organization in the industry to tie all those together and look at the big picture. So those are the things that can happen. You can have gaps, you can have overlaps, you can have mixed messages to stakeholders. So all kinds of unintended negative consequences can occur. You know, there have been some silos in WEC and in CMEP that we've really worked hard to overcome. And we've made really good strides toward developing that one CMEP sort of mindset and experiences from an outside in sort of stakeholder perspective. One of the things we recognize is when it comes to risk identification and risk mitigation, we really need to go beyond that and really think more broadly in terms of a one WEC, right? Sort of a one WEC concept. So the need we see is, again, we really need to shift the conversation from, you know, reliability from different, just I look at the world through my lenses, to really looking broadly, to shift the conversation to reliability and security risks. And you heard a lot of that yesterday, right? We heard a lot of the conversation about reliability and security risks yesterday. And we have a lot of different lenses. So what we needed to do was to bring those lenses together to look at risk from a more holistic perspective. So that's what we've done this year. We purposefully and deliberately addressed that by forming a new team. And that's Tim Reynolds' risk analysis team, and we recently pulled in data services function into that. So when you look at this new team, well, what is that team all about? That team, the primary objective is to understand risks from a holistic perspective, rather than just solely from a departmental perspective of looking through the lenses. And, you know, we need to understand what the risks are, who's doing what to address those risks, what their ranking is, what the relative priority is. And we need to make sure that there's awareness across the organization about how all that stuff fits together and how our work can be efficient and be effective and make sure we're addressing the right things the right way. So that's the intent. Tim and I talk about this. We kind of call his team the octopus of the organization. It's a team, it's not in the compliance organization. It's actually in what's called the RAPA organization, reliability and performance analysis, the whole other side of WEC that does a lot of the other reliability work. So as the octopus, we've got tendrils all over, so we understand, we talk across the organization to formulate sort of a prioritized list of risks, we can call it a risk registry, right? So we work together from a WEC-wide perspective to understand what those risks are. And one of the things we do with that is an input to what we call a regional risk assessment, right? You may have heard of that. And that information feeds into the CMEP implementation plan, CMEP IP. So that's some of the work that Tim's team does. One of the things we like to think that we look at the forest, right? Whereas the operations, the oversight planning group is going to look at the individual trees, right? The individual entity IRAs and the individual entity COPs. That's not what Tim's team does. However, there is some information exchange between those two functions so that we understand the whole risk picture. So if we think about WEC, we took a look at the vision, the mission. The octopus not only extends across WECC as an organization, but it also extends to the external stakeholder community. And we do that through our partnership. One of the ways we accomplish our vision and mission you see here is through our independence, our perspective, and our partnership. One of the ways we partner with our stakeholders, this is one way. Yesterday was a full day of partnering with our stakeholders. Another way we do that is through our committee structure. So a WECC committee is basically, it's a WECC representative and a group of stakeholders from various, big utilities, small utilities, all kinds of stakeholders come together to address a certain issue, like performance analysis, like event analysis, like performing long-term studies and things like that. So that's the way we work with committees. If you go to WECC's website and click on the committees button, you'll see a whole swath of committees. So that's one way that we partner with stakeholders. I want to talk to you a little bit about one of the committees that's of key interest to this, and that's the Reliability Risk Committee, or the RRC. You'll notice some parallels between the purpose of the RRC, as stated in its charter, and WECC's mission that we just looked at. So the RRC's purpose is to identify and address known and emerging risks to the reliability and security of the Western interconnection. That's what the RRC exists to do. And so we work with stakeholders. That's where those tendrils extend into the stakeholder community to get the entity's perspective, to leverage the entity's expertise, to work together with the entities to make sure that we get the full breadth of what the risks are and how they're being addressed and how they need to be addressed. One of the things we acknowledge is we see what we see and we know what we know. But we do a lot better job when we partner with our stakeholders to accomplish that, because you see things we don't see and you know things we don't know. One of the things that the RRC is primarily responsible for is working with WECC staff and another top-level committee, the Reliability Assessment Committee, to develop and maintain an ongoing prioritized list of known and emerging reliability and security risks facing the interconnection. So that's what the RRC does. And the RRC and Tim's team work very closely together. It's very much a seamless thing there. Very effective. One of the initial goals of the RRC was to develop a risk management process. And when we set out going about to do that, we quickly learned, boy, this has already been done. And there are some proven methods already out there. So we stole it. What is it called? Research and development, R&D, rip off and duplicate. So we borrowed a proven technology, a risk management process from ISO 31000. So we developed a risk management process that goes through some steps. There's the risk identification, there's the risk analysis and evaluation. And these are steps that each identified risk goes through sequentially to make sure that we do the proper analysis. And on the right side of the screen there, you'll see the reliability risk matrix that all of the ERO, in fact, uses to make sure that each risk, we understand where they are, then we understand if we act on this risk a certain way, where does that risk then move on that reliability matrix? And what's the residual risk? And can we tolerate that risk after we have taken these steps? And that brings, Scott, you mentioned that yesterday. So very much ties into what we're talking about here today. So at this point, I will turn it over to Tim Reynolds to take us through the rest of the conversation. Green button advances right there.
Yeah, thanks.
I haven't finished my coffee yet.
Good morning, everyone. So my name's Tim Reynolds. I've actually been here at WECC for over 11 years now. So some of you may know me from interactions that I've had. I actually presented at a reliability and security conference over 10 years ago. And so, but for what's interesting is I still know quite a bit of people even from that 10 years ago that are still here today. So glad to see all the everybody, and excited to present for today, especially about this topic. And so one thing I always like to say is I've been here at WECC for over 11 years, but well, why? Why have I been here for that long? One of the things that which I enjoy the most about working at WECC is the interactions I'm able to have with everybody that go beyond compliance even too. As we have the one CMEP approach, and Vic had mentioned here about the risk and one WECC, everything else on that. One of the great things about working with WECC is through our committees as well. And, everybody that attends the NERC committees as well, and be able to work on trying to address those risks that are happening within the interconnection and everything that's happening. So that's why it's great to partner with the RRC on this, to be able to get some feedback. And we'll go into that in just a minute of where we're at with this process and going into it. But if you're going to take anything away from today, from this presentation, please let it be this, that your engagement and participation to this is critical to its success. And I'll go into that just a little bit more. But again, as you're interacting with those subject matter experts, or if you are the subject matter experts, as you're engaging with things within the industry and in real-time operations, planning operations, everything else, you're the eyes and ears, you see what's happening. And it's that information that rolls back up into this process is really what helps it out the most. So what we have done though with the RRC and going through all of this, and so as Rick, sorry, it's early in the morning, I'm still waking up, sorry everyone. But as Vic had said regarding the RRC process, last year we spent a good time, there was a sub-team that was formed underneath them. With Vic and I helping to lead that, where we created the process document. And it's posted on the RRC's website, where you can go and read the process document and see the documentation to it. So, but as that was approved in February, we've kind of gone through, as what Vic had mentioned, the risk register. So that's listing all the risks, general risks here within the interconnection and some brief risk descriptions with them. So we had our initial feedback on our kind of draft proposal back in June, and that was sent out to all the RRC reps and others, and it was in the WECC weekly emails. If everybody, hopefully you're looking at that, right? Asking for feedback on that, and we received a lot of feedback as well on the risks and the descriptions and everything else. So we were able to take that, change some of the feedback that's in it. There were also a lot of new risks that were also proposed, which we're also going through. But in our October meeting, which was last week, we actually proposed to them, if I go back to this one, if you look at that chart on the right regarding the reliability risk matrix, that's part of the analysis section within the process document. Again, I'm not going to spend most of the time talking about the process document because you can go out and read it. But in the analysis section, we also proposed to the RRC regarding that list of risks, what is a high, what's a medium, what's a low. So that initial draft is out there. But there's also the evaluation section that now says, okay, now we have the analysis done. What should we be focusing on? What are the higher ones that we have some control over, that we might be able to do something about? And so that is actually out there right now. And we'll be sending out some email communications, hopefully this week, if not next. So most of our communication people are helping with this meeting here today. So hopefully next week at the latest, we'll have more information out and asking for everybody for feedback on that risk ranking process and how things are looking at the moment. So that's where we're at after the October meeting. So if we go to the December meeting now, or sorry, not December meeting, but in December, we're hoping to get all that feedback back into us, where we're going to go ahead and complete that risk ranking. So in January of next year, we're going to hit what we call our regional risk report. So this is new for WECC. This is going to be a public thing, working with the RRC to do. So as we have our risk register, the priorities, everything else, we're going to be doing a report and publishing that so everybody can be aware of what's going on. What are the risks within the interconnection? What are the priorities that we're trying to focus on? If you see anything with this, though, we are trying to bring visibility into the process of what we're doing, make sure everybody is aware of it. I do have a question, though. How many people before this meeting have actually heard of this process? Please raise hands. Anybody? Okay, that's what I was wondering. This is, I think, is our 26th presentation on this process. So as we've gone through the committees, you know, at WECC and other places, one of the number one things we keep saying is please talk about this within your organization. I'm going to say the same thing to everybody that's online or in the meeting today. Please talk about this process within your organization. Please bring some visibility to it. Help others. Make sure you have a member on the WECC RRC. So I do have the barcode there that hopefully you should be able to scan and put it in. If not, the link is down at the bottom, but the presentation is also posted where you can be able to access it. But please make sure you have a member that's on the RRC so that they are actively there, they're participating, being able to provide information on what's going on. Now, is this process absolutely perfect? No, it's not. It's initial steps. We're getting things going. We want to engage the RRC more, and we have plans to do that next year. But a lot of this year is getting their advice and their feedback, having them try to work with their organizations. But again, this is about our 26th presentation, so we need your help too. Part of your help is critical to this success. So that being said, I'm sure this is something that everybody wants to know a little bit more of too. Well, how is this risk process, as we say in one WECC as a whole, how is that interacting with the CMEP process? As Vic has said before, we're not underneath a CMEP process. We're part of the RAPA, the Reliability Planning and Performance Analysis Group. So we're the ones that work a lot with the WECC committees, performance analysis data, everything else on all of this. And I want to just say, this is the guiding principle, that very first bullet within anything that we're doing or saying is the confidentiality rules and agreements are and will be maintained. And what do I mean by that? If you're familiar with the EISAC Code of Conduct, that basically says in there that regions cannot share data from their portal and everything else with anybody that has a CMEP role within the organization. So, or the WECC, that's the Western Interconnection Data Sharing Agreement, basically says any information that WECC obtains from that cannot be used for CMEP purposes. So I'm not sure if everybody here is aware of certain things like that, that impacts WECC on what we do internally. But those have been around for years. And so I just want to make sure everybody is aware that these confidentiality rules and agreements, WECC still abides by them, and we will continue to abide by them as we go through this. But as we continue to evolve what we're doing within WECC, there's also a lot of data that we collect and what we have. And we want to make sure that we cut a little bit out of the redundancy. Why is CMEP staff asking you that question when we just provided that in a request that the planners just asked for or something? So what we want to try to do is make sure which we're bridging that gap a little bit more internally where that information can be shared. But we also want to leverage, other information like the GADs and TADs as we're looking at risks upon the interconnection holistically. What are those trends that are happening? What are the risks that this data is also telling us? We want to make sure that we're looking at that and providing it, internally here within WECC. Now, the next question is, well, Tim, could you also share this externally as well? And to some point, we actually already are. If you go onto WECC's website and you actually look at it's in the middle underneath the quick links, it's the System Performance Data Portal. For anybody that hasn't been there, go check it out. There's some trends in there with the GADs and TADs and everything else, and we will be providing more on that on an interconnection level as much as we can. So go and take a look. But again, participate in the WECC committees because a lot of this information we'll be talking about within those, especially the RRC. And I'm going to say this again. I've said it throughout all the other presentations. This isn't the last you've heard from us. So we will definitely be coming back and talking more about this as things continue to evolve. But again, if there's anything you can take away from this, please remember your participation is critical to the success. So with that being said, we're almost out of time and leave a little bit moment for some questions. Is there any questions from anyone? Okay. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you so much.